this Imece Solidarity seminars, we invited several association and researcher and activists for this summer to meet and to listen them and create a kind of a recorded seminar for our website for Imece. And the main purpose was to really share different kind of horizontal solidarity practices. And this is why we are following every 2 weeks, sometimes every 3 weeks, with invited guests, their practice. Tonight we have Sandi Hilal, but before I would like to ask Ali, head of, can I say head of or Imece Solidarity, to introduce the Imece Solidarity also a few sentences, and then I will introduce Sandi and then give the word to Sandi. It's okay, Ali?
Yeah, sure. İmece organization, İmece Initiative. İmece means solidarity in our language, and initiative, as you know. You don't need wait order or directive from someone for take positive action. And since 8 years we are on the way. We are working for all humanity, and especially for refugees since 7 years in İzmir region. We did create a few new programs for empowerment, woman empowerment, something like that. I'm thankful for being here now, and I don't want to speak too much. I want to give back to my
Thank you, Ali.
dear teacher. Yeah.
And with this Sandi and Ali maybe also mentioned bit that we are trying to, we started with like online seminars, but then after summer we want to be more organized, physical. Because of COVID we did many things online, but we have this Imece Academia, like creating a kind of an alternative way of learning together, mainly activists and researchers who are involved with Imece. So this is why I was thinking with Ali and Elif, inviting different people from different practice from different field could be very useful. I would like to introduce Sandi, and then I will give the word to Sandi Hilal. Sandi is a Palestinian architect and researcher. She was the head of the infrastructure and camp improvement program in West Bank in Palestine. Together with Alessandro Petti, she founded Campus in Camps, an experimental educational program hosted in Daisheh refugee camp in Bethlehem, with the aims to overcome conventional educational structures by creating space for critical and grounded knowledge production connected to greater transformation and democratization of society. Hilal and Petti co-authored the book Architecture After Revolution in 2007, and she founded also with Petti, Alessandro Petti and Eyal Weizman, Decolonizing Architecture Art Residency, and also the recent book I should mention, the Refugee Heritage. The project and the book was conducted in the last year by Sandi and Alessandro, and also Sandi initiated Almasha, a kind of a public art engagement space in different kind of institution and different kind of cities, and it could be interesting in Europe, and it could be or in different places also. It could be interesting to hear from Sandi how she founded and facilitated, and what are the impact and outcome for her. So thank you very much, Sandi, to give your time for today. We have 1 hour total with question and answers.
Yeah, thank you, Pelin. I'm so happy to be here around you all. And indeed, I mean, I would like only to give a little bit of context on how the Living Room project or Al-Madafa project departure in indeed in Sweden, but it departed maybe from a strong moment of crisis that I myself had, and these public art projects are normally also related to a very personal trajectory in my case, because my practice and my life are always correlated. I don't see actually I mean, they are always going step by step together. And indeed, you know, it was a moment where I worked for in collectivity. I worked in Palestine for more than 12 years indeed. And we sort of had been working in refugee camps for so long time. And it was a moment where we also published a book called Permanent Temporariness. And it was about what does it mean to live temporary life forever, and where is a place that we can call home, what home might mean for us, and how can we still be maintaining our agency as people if we are always temporary in these places. And we learned a lot from refugee camps, and somehow even if people were there and willing to come back the day after to their lost houses and villages and places, they were still acting every day in building their own life, in thinking how to actually still be active in their life. And indeed, maybe the concept of permanent temporariness is a concept that tries a little bit to link all the ones that are actually living in a place thinking maybe I should not buy a sofa because maybe I'm leaving the day after, and they might last in that place for years without leaving, yet in their mind they have a feeling that they are leaving the day after. And how can we a little bit create a sort of conceptual framework around the ones that are not really, did not born and will die in the same place. And you know, there's, of course, there are people that are completely eradicated, feeling localized in one place and have been able to born and die in one place. But there are other people that, like refugees and maybe many others, by choice or obliged, they have been trying to figure out what does it mean to belong to more than place contemporary in simultaneously, and how they can create practices around life practices and still be active in that places where they have been. And for me, actually, going from a place like Palestine, where I was radicated, right? I mean, my knowledge was radicated. It was a long-term knowledge. It was a long-term engagement. I have been into developing one thing after the other and several layers of knowledge, finding myself suddenly in a place like Sweden. And what did it mean for me to actually begin a life in Sweden, and how I transform this and understand this as a way of demanding agency. And in order to do so, maybe I would like to show you now a video that would bring me back to these moments where I arrived to Sweden and how I developed the project, and then explain a little bit more the project and then open up for questions. I will share now my I will share my screen. Okay. You see it, right? Do you see a full screen? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, we see it's full screen. Yeah.
Yes.
The only story that is told about Boden is its military story. The place that meant to protect the northern border of Sweden from a potential war that would come from Russia. Wow, what a place. It was the place where soldiers used to live. waiting a war from Russia to arrive. The arrival of refugees in Boden is part of this war that they were waiting for.
بتذكر أول ما طلعنا بالباصات وصلنا لهون عند بودن، فأحد الأشخاص قالوا إنه السويد بعتتنا لعند الدببة، ما في أشخاص هون نهائياً بس دببة. أنا هيك تفكر يعني صفنت إنه معقول إنه هو بس غابات ودببة، إنه كان راح يكون نص الغابات.
The yellow house is that building in the middle of nowhere in Boden, and it used to be for a long time the most discriminated social housing for even the people in Boden, and that as a consequence it was turned to be the place where refugees were sent to live. You get inside these rooms, very small one, very closed one because of the winter, because of the cold, and there is a feeling that they live completely alone in that place that where they belong nowhere, and they sort of have no social life, and they seems to be waiting for that moment that they will leave that place. And you know, I feel that the depression comes out of the fact that they had a dream of arriving to Sweden, and by arriving to Boden, they were shocked that this was not the dream they were looking for. I was desperate. I thought that there is nothing that can be done there. I mean, from one side, a war that never arrived, and from the other, refugees depressed and looking for the day they will leave Boden. What type of project can be ever done there? I wake up in the morning after, and I decided to come back to the yellow house and ask people if they know about anyone among refugees that is planning to stay in Boden. To my surprise, they told me, yeah, you should meet Yasmin and Ibrahim. طب كيف ليش؟
العلاقات يعني من أول ما جينا حاولنا نسوي.
هاي القهوة السورية. طب أنا بدي أخذ لي كمان قهوة سورية. واحدة إلي يجيبها واحدة.
هو يعني إنه يحكوا هم إنه الجود من الموجود، هذا مثل عربي. فنحن هذا اللي تعودنا عليه يعني في بيئتنا وفي مجتمعنا في عاداتنا وتقاليدنا، إنه تحاول تقدم اللي عندك وبعدين إيش تعتذر إنه هذا اللي أنا أقدر أقدمه.
أنا بدي أدفع هذا.
لا.
أي الله. وهاد كمان الله يسعدك. ثنتين. لا مش لا وحياتك الهدية هيك صعبة. إبراهيم احكي شيء. نطلع مش دافعين. تسلم شكرا. When somebody arrives to a new place, he's obviously a guest. I have no problem to be a guest, and I have no problem even to be a perfect guest, but I still want to exercise my right to host. And I think that what refugees lose the moment they cross the borders to Europe is their right to host.
لما وصلنا لهون على السويد مثل ما خبرتك قبل كان كتير صعب إنه تدخلي بالمجتمع السويدي ونتعرف على أشخاص سويديين، أو إنه مجرد إنك تعرفيهم عن حالك وإنه إنه إحنا من سوريا. فكان شعور إنه حتى لما بقول لك سوري إحنا آسفين إنه هيك صار فيكم، كان شعور ممكن إنه يزعجنا، يعني إنه حتى لما واحد يتأسف على الشيء اللي صار شيء بيزعجك يعني. ايه فمن هون انه بلشنا انه مثلا شفنا اي شخص انه تعال جرب اكلنا السوري، فينا نحكي لك شوي عن سوريا، فيك تعرف عنا شوي، وهيك بلشنا من هالموضوع إنه نفتح غرفة المعيشة تبعتنا أو الليفينج روم. النظافة بالنسبة لمجتمعنا العربي والسوري بشكل خاص، وإذا فينا نقول محافظتنا نحن بشكل خاص الرقة، لها تاريخ قديم جدا. بتذكر أول لما كان يحكي لنا إنه والدي مثلا أو إنه أجداده إنه كان باب غرفة النظافة ما بصير يتسكر، إنه دائما بيكون مفتوح للضيف، وكان الضيف يجي 3 أيام على البيت وأنت ما تسأله حتى إنه ليش شو جاي، يعني 3 أيام بتضيفه وبعدها ممكن إذا بدك تسأله إنه أنت ليش جاي.
كان هذا المجتمع مثل مرجع يعتبر، أو مثل مكان يعني أوكي خلينا نروح لهذا المكان، خلينا نروح لهاي النظافة، نروح تجي الناس طبعا اللي عندهم مشاكل يحكوا في مشاكلهم، وبالأخص أيام الربيع العربي. فصارت النظافة مكان التقاء الآراء كلها، المؤيد مع المعارض كلهم يجتمعوا بنفس المكان ويصيروا يحكوا ويصيروا يتناقشوا. ممكن توصل لحد إنه هذا الفريق مثلا فرحا بسقوط ديكتاتور
شكلهم مؤيدين معارضين مو؟
بالضبط.
I don't think it's the weather or the cold or the isolation. I believe that what refugees misses the most is finally somebody without expecting it coming and knocking their door.
أول حاجة طلبنا منه إنه يجي لعندنا، فقال إنه فتح التقويم تبعه الكالندر، فأعطانا موعد بعد 2 أو 3 أسابيع ما بتذكر بالضبط. فإنه أنا طلعت هيك على إبراهيم إنه بعد 3 أسابيع لحتى يجي لحد لعنا وإنه يشرب فنجان قهوة. فإبراهيم قال خلص إنه أوكي يعني نبلش من هيك، فبكرة كل أسبوع يصير عندنا حدا. بقدر أقول إنه هي نقلة نوعية كبيرة إنه إحنا نفتح غرفة معيشتنا. ابنك رح يعيش في هالمجتمع، كيف إنه أنت رح تربي هالطفل بمجتمع جديد مثلا، كل شيء فيه جديد. يعني ما بقدر أربيه مثلا كيف أنا ربيت بسوريا، ولا أقدر أربيه مثلا كيف السويديين عم يتربوا هلا، بس فيني آخذ مثلا من الاثنين.
Yes, more life. Yes. I lived here 5 years ago. A few years ago, it was completely dead. Now I see more people outside, I think.
This living room managed to switch the whole dynamics of guest and hosts. Yasmin and Ibrahim are not anymore the guests in Sweden. They actually, by opening their living room, they managed to regain back their agency.
Så det var så i Boden?
Det har varit.
Så vad hände? Eller vad har hänt i Boden?
Vet du varför det var så många?
Ja.
Alltså militärerna som låg inne här i Boden, de fick inte åka hem.
Soon.
That arrives, I mean, very soon. Exactly.
They all lived to Stockholm.
They're only.
Yeah.
Is integration only about denying a previous culture that you brought with you? Or it is about bringing the old and the new life together? And at the sudden, in that tiny living room, I felt that Ibrahim and Yasmin was able to bring their past, their present, and their future all together.
Yeah.
Hello.
I do.
The living room project is very much about how to deal with the role of the domestic space within a framework of statelessness. Indeed, when I say statelessness, I don't mean that are only people that are without state legally, but statelessness means people that indeed feel not represented by the state or are not represented in that moment by the state or legally stateless. And in a sense, the way they disassociate themselves from the public space, or that they do not belong to the public space, or that they have hard time accessing public space, the role of the domestic becomes very important for them. And indeed, the Living Room project is one of these projects that is very much dealing with, if I am stateless, what does it mean for me to be still in collectivity, to create common places, to create places from where I still believe that I belong, I can speak, I can express my perspective, I can express my being, and I can be proud of who I am. During the process of the project, we were given a ground floor in the Yellow House. And in this ground floor, we tried to turn it into a semi-square. Indeed, the only architectural intervention that have been done here is to throw all possible walls and to open up to the outside, and is one of the corners of the building becoming simply transparent and can open itself on both sides. And in good days, it becomes a completely open corridors to the outside. And in the cold times, it becomes a square through which you see the light and you see people sitting, and it becomes almost a light box of square that people are able to see from outside and indeed interact or come in. And it has been working in an amazing way by having Yasmin proposing herself as a host. Yasmin began to come to the living room and began to activate it. And with time, they created what they called the Saturday's rituals. There is a lot of co-hosting or offering each other the ability of being hosts, because they understand that hosting is power, hosting is visibility, and they are all into this situation where they are kept guests forever as migrants. And I think that they understood that by practicing the right of hosting, it's a way of claiming agency, of becoming visible in the city.
هلا أنا يمكن أول وثاني مرة حسب ما بذكر أنا اللي اخترت، وأنا تعمدت إنه تكون من بلدان مختلفة، يعني كل أسبوع بلد مختلف، يعني لكل واحد يظهر إيش في عنده مثلاً. وبنفس الوقت حتى لو كان مثلاً من نفس البلد، إنه أشخاص مختلفين كل واحد يظهر بيئته بشكل مختلف حتى. فهي أول مرة وثاني مرة أنا اللي اخترت ممكن. بس بعد هيك لا، الأشخاص هم صاروا يجوا لعندي أو يكتبوا لي أو شيء إنه فينا إحنا نطبخ الأسبوع الجاي، حابين نطبخ كذا، حابين نكون يعني متواجدين بنشارك مثلا. يعني هم بيحسوا إنه هاد يومهم يعني، فبدهم يظهروا بأحسن ما يكون، بغض النظر إن كانوا متواجدين السويديين أو مش السويديين الموجودين يعني. بس إنه كل شخص بيحس حاله إنه خلص إنه هاد يومي يعني، ولا بعزم حدا، بقول إنه مين بده يطبخ المرة الجاية وخلص. فهو بيتكفل حتى باليوم، بيخبر أو هاي. أحياناً إنه إيه إذا شفت حدا جديد أو هاي بخبر عن المشروع إنه نحن هناك فيكم تتفضلوا تواجدوا. بس الأشخاص اللي متواجدين بيعرفوا لا خلص، حتى في بعضهم إنه صار يوم السبت ما بيرتبط بولا شيء، يعني في عنا يلهاوس، في عنا وظافة لازم نروح. فهيك. وحتى في رجال إنه صارت تشجع المشروع، مو بس نسائي، يعني في رجال كتير صاروا يطلبوا إن هم يطبخوا، إنهم يكونوا يشاركوا، في رجال طبخوا يعني. فحسيت إنه صار الكل يعني إنه بده يطبخ، بده يشارك، بده يكون موجود يعني. وكمان مرتين ثلاثة خلينا كمان إنه فينا نقول مراهقين أو أطفال كمان يطبخوا، طبعا بإشراف والدتهم يعني، بس طبخوا. واحد منهم بتذكر كان عمره يمكن 12 أو 13 سنة، عمل لنا شاورما يعني. فكان هيك حسيت إنه الكل يعني متشجع، إنه أنا بدي أكون، ليش لا أنا كمان فيني أعمل شيء. فأنا يومها تفاجأت لما هو طلب مني إنه فيني أطبخ، قلت له إيه ما في مشكلة. فقعد هو من أول وجديد يعني من الصفر بلش وقطع الدجاج واشتغل فيه من البداية للنهاية. وحسيت يعني قبل بيوم إنه ستريس، إنه ثاني يوم ما بيلحق، معلش أفرم قبل بيوم الدجاج وهاي. فهيك حسيتهم يعني إنه بدهم يكونوا جزء.
And indeed, I have to say that in 3 years' time, they absolutely managed to put the living room in the map, in the institutional map of the city. And you see them, they are proud of it. They even began to invite politicians at a certain point to bring them in their space and to show them what they managed to create. And there was a sense of proudness of being host and of having their own place where they can invite the rest of the city. جربتوا كثير مرات تعزموا السياسيين، انتوا تعزموهم للمضافة بدل ما هم يعزموكم لنشاطاتهم. بتفكري أثر مين اللي عازم مين؟ يعني أثر إنه هم إجوا هون بدل ما انتوا تكونوا رحتوا عندهم على البلدية ولا على مؤسساتهم، ولا يعني اختلف إشي بطريقة بالعلاقة؟
هو ما اختلف إشي بالعلاقة، بس يمكن نحن اللي كسرنا الحاجز. هلا أكيد واحد لما بيكون هو المستضيف فبيحس نقطة القوة مثلا عنده بإيده يعني. فلما أنت مثلا بتقعدي أنت تشرحي، بصير دورك مثلا كلاجئ أنا بدي أشرح هلا إنه هاي قوانيني، إنه أنا ببلدي مثلا كنت هيك، إنه إحنا كنا ناكل هذا. هلا بيجوز إنه هو ما بيعني شيء للشخص المقابلك، بس هو بيعني لك لإلك إنه أنت عطيتيه شيء أو نقطة أو شيء نظرة عن الشيء اللي عشتيه قبل. يمكن هو بيعني لك كثير، مثلا ممكن يعني لي كثير إنه أشرب فنجان قهوة مع هيل يعني. بيجوز هو عم يتذوقه لأول مرة، بيجوز ما عجبه يعني، بس بالنسبة لإلي يعني عم بشرح له إنه فنجان القهوة مع الهيل بيعني لي كثير.
Sandi, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just want to quickly summarize also for our guests, and as we are recording in the video too, you somehow, I see, your practice in West Bank is transformed into a different way of negotiating and provocating the conditions in Europe of the migrant and refugee status and situation and their public space. I remember when we were watching the Al Madafa, I know the project, of course, I'm following, but I was thinking also the design that you did together with the woman of the public space in the refugee camp in West Bank. Again, a kind of a negotiation with the people together about creating a public space in the camp that the women can participate. And then totally we see here a different example that you're initiating, criticizing the guest and host relation of Europe and European institution of the refugees, of the migrants, and how to create an agency using artistic and architectural methodologies in creating such agency that people take over and negotiate the guest and host, who is the host, who is the guest, and what are the rules, what are the conditions. I'm curious to hear also your experience in the camp in West Bank, I forgot in
Alfawar.
In Alfawar, the public space that you designed, it was a long process, participatory process. I was comparing when I was watching the video, I was comparing the two projects, totally different, but interestingly, your experience, how it is transforming there in a different kind of guest and host and meaning of public space, participation, engagement, institution, different kind of institutions, like art institution, UNCR, or other kind of institution, you know, how you are negotiating also yourself with those institutions. It could be interesting maybe to hear this past experience and the current one. How do you inform, how those experiences of yours inform each other, and what are the differences of the geographical differences in Palestine, in the camp, in Boden, or in other city in Europe, you know? Could be also another camp, you know, for me.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think that you know, I would not say that Boden is the first living room I sort of created, yet maybe it was the one where I understood that living rooms has been extremely important in our previous practice. And I will try to explain, because for me, maybe the first real living room that I created was in Fawar refugee camp, this plaza at the end of the day. And indeed, I will a little bit try to give a very maybe quick story of the plaza for the ones that have never heard about this project. It is basically a project in the camp. And indeed, there was a moment where women themselves express their need for a place where they can play with their kids, right? And then in somehow we decided to move forward, and we choose a place. And the moment that we chose this place, and we were in front of the fact that we are having is a plaza for that neighborhood, the question raised is that what does it mean to actually, who is managing that space? I mean, what a public space in a refugee camp where the notions of private and public are not the same as we know them in camps, right? In cities, because in a way that the private is private to a certain extent, because people lives in the houses where they are living. They are not owning these houses legally, yet they were the ones that were building them and adding on them, etc., but they don't own it. This is not their houses legally. Yet also the public space is not, there is no public that is managing that place, means that there is no municipality that is managing that place. And even the UN in refugee camps is super clear about it, is that they do not manage refugee camp. They do provide services, and they make a clear distinction between managing a place, means that you are the manager of that public spaces that are in between the houses of people, or you are simply a service provider, means that, you know, you provide people with food, you provide people with education when needed, you provide people with health, but you are not acting as a municipality for the camps. And this was extremely important. And this was my main discussions always with the legal office in UNRWA, in the UN, because being a head of a department that is trying to understand holistically the urban planning of the camp, their main worry was that we are not doing any project that would imply in any way that the UN is managing that camp. So in a situation where you don't have neither public nor private, and you don't have actually anybody that is managing that places, what kind of public, what kind of collectivity? Again, we come back to the same question. When you are in a stateless situation, what kind of collectivity that can be created, and who is managing that collectivity? So we chose a little bit of a square, a very tiny one. And then suddenly, you know, people were deciding, and we were talking about it. Some people suggest that there should be a guard, and that, but mainly everybody agreed on the fact that there should be walls in that square, right? So, and you know, it was a moment where I came back from Europe, and you know, this whole notion of public spaces, an open public space for everybody, where diversity would meet, where without me understanding, indeed, this is a good picture. And somehow, you know, these four walls were for people extremely important, right? They were insisting on them and they were so patient with me, because of course, as an architect that has been trained in Europe, I was completely fascinated by this idea of the square as an open place where, you know, diversity would be encountered. But here it's not that it is open space for everybody. When it comes to the European plaza, you know, you have the state that is managing that place. So people are hosted by the state, right? Even in the biggest European plazas, you know, people feel that they are free, they are there. But matter of fact, when things makes real, the real host of these plazas are the state, right? So while in the camp, there is nobody hosting in that squares, and there is no public, and there is no state. So how people will manage that collectivity? And they were so you know, in somehow so sure that without walls, they would not be able to manage that plaza. And they explained to me several times, you know, walls are a way for that plaza to become manageable. And they explained to me, you know, they make one or different kinds of examples where, because there is a lot of conflict resolution going on in the camp, where, you know, any problem that happens between people, there are, you know, some people meet and decide who is wrong, who is right, who is responsible for whom. And they were giving me an example. If you have someone entering in the plaza and the kids, and that someone is ill, or a pregnant woman or anything, right? And they would get in the plaza, they happen to be in that plaza that you wanted to be open, and you want it to be for everyone, etc., etc. And you don't cross a threshold, right? But you happen to be in that plaza, and something wrong would happen to that person. Who is fault, or the fault is of whom? I think that they insisted, and they wanted so much this crossing of the threshold of people in that room, which is, for me, I mean, I understood that this is a roofless living room, in a way that they can manage who is hosting in that moment, right? Are they the small kids that are actually playing football, are the main hosts in that plaza, and everybody else is coming in as guests? Are there these women that are claiming, you know, there was also, there has been developed a movement of women led by a woman called Ayat Turshan, where she began a movement called the right of the woman to be in the public space. And she used that plaza, and while they were in, they were the one hosting the rest of the camp, etc., etc. And the fact that to have 4 walls and 4 doors and permit a threshold to happen was a way actually to organize this host guest situation, right? So in somehow going to Europe, and this whole maybe the Gastarbeiter from Germany, and all the fact that, you know, people are very clearly, both conceptually and practically, kept guests forever in Europe, was so extreme in that sense. And I began also to bring many things from the camp and the other way around, to understand the camp from that perspective, and how a living room condition is still, even if in the outside, is still giving us the possibility to still be exchanging who is the guest and who is the host. While in the public space, in a place like Europe, there is only one host, and that one host is the state. And everybody else needs to be integrated within that big living room of the state. And therefore, this whole integration process is a never-ending thing. And you being a guest forever is a never-ending thing. And the project is very much about, is there a possibility of understanding how we keep exchanging guest and host condition in the public, between the public and the private? And maybe to end by what I was inspired by, a hadith of Islam that says, الضيافة 3 أيام فما بعد فصدقة means that hospitality is for 3 days. After that, it becomes a sadaqah. And a sadaqah is a way, you know, you just keep people guests because you have pettiness on them, because you are giving them a charity in somehow. It's not because they will lose their status as respectful guests and they become charity for these states and these people. So in somehow this project coming back also from the camp and how people were having a very strong political agency inspired by this, I sort of began to understand how you will demand what happens the 4th day you are in any place, right? I mean, how you would still be claiming your right to host and not accept your being guests forever, become a way to politicize refugees, to understand yourself as a political agent, as someone that has social and political agency in that place, and pretend to be not only a guest, and eventually after 3 days a sadaqah, but begin to demand that you can move between your being guest and host for it as an exchange of rules and power dynamics.
Thank you very much. Ali, do you want to say something? Because I see a lot of a little bit a parallel with image activities of opening space and hosting people and running. I think there is a kind of echoing what the host and guest relation that Sandi wants to challenge. Do you want to say something on behalf of Imece?
You meant in Imece village, or can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, not. You meant in Imece village or in unofficial refugee settlement around İzmir? Helin.
Yes. Is it the question? I didn't understand.
I meant in Imece village we have a.
Oh yes, Imece. Yeah.
We hosting a lot of Syrian women and also their kids, as you know, and we wanted to create harmony each other, and we wanted create equality.
Space.
Yeah, space.
Something that they can. This village, Sandi, it was Imece initiated a village in several places. A village means a kind of an eco space, like ecological, agricultural, and space that refugees, like mainly Syrians, right now, and their children, that they can spend time and host and organize things, and also volunteers. There are many volunteers of Imece from all around the world who can do something together. This is one thing. And secondly, Ali, I will mention also the workshops that you are doing for women from Congo.
Yes, please.
There are many
from Africa.
And mainly from Congo, Sandi. There are many refugees from Congo, female, especially in İzmir. And right now, since a year, I think, Imece is running in a space, a kind of a workshop that they can produce their own solar bank, and they can sell. They can also that Imece and Ali is trying to push to create their cooperative or kind of an association that they can take the initiative, not to learn something or being hosted, but also productively produce something and take an initiative and create to themselves as a woman together a kind of a association or little enterprise, something like that. So this is what Imece is trying to work on. It could be something I was feeling. It's a kind of a parallel that this host and guest relationship, where the guest becomes the a kind of host, but in a way that because they need to survive, it's not like Europe here, that fully state is taking charge or protecting or whatever. It doesn't happen here so much, especially maybe focusing on Syrian refugees. Somehow Turkish government is doing, but then if it comes to Congo, other kind of the Afghan or other kind of Palestinian, other kind of nationalities, it's totally their status is more precarious than the Syrians, comparable to Syrians situation right now. So it's important that how those women every day how they can survive in everyday life. This is more urgent, comparable to situation in Europe is more worse, of course. And then the idea is that how, for example, with women in Congo, from Congo, there was a lot of solar bank workshop, but also a lot of permaculture workshop that they can learn a skill and then create a kind of a group or community that they can continue their everyday life in situation like you were mentioning, Sandi, about the permanent and the temporariness, being in Izmir, for example, because they come from Africa, they come from Palestine, some Azerbaijan, Afghanistan, many other places, not only Syria, and then they're trying to cross from Izmir, from Aegean Sea to the islands, to Mytilene and Chios and other islands. This is a kind of a reality that is going on here to reach to Europe, so we are in a very passage in a way that temporariness and permanency become very, like, people live in permanent temporariness for clear here, either to reach Europe or to find something in Turkey, and there is no way to go back. This is the situation. So how to solve this precarious situation, beside the visibility in public space, it's also the survival strategies, and it needs a lot of different kind of productive solidarity practices. This is the situation that is different, but then there is so much parallel discussion about producing public space, challenging the host and guest relation, not only being in a situation that in Imece we ask a lot how to not continuously help the sadaka, not only keeping up with this position, but how Imece can transform it into a more creative and self hosting, self creating different kind of agency, how we can find this.
Yeah, I think, Helene, if I got a lesson from refugee camps is how never in any extreme situation to abandon the political struggle, right? And I can understand that people are having so hard time, but that does not mean not to understand how to continue one political struggle. And look at Palestinians, for example, even when the moment that they lost their houses in the 48 and immediately after, while they were still living in tents and began to almost replace the tents by homes, the first question that they asked, it was a very strong political question. We are now building walls instead of the tents. Should we build the roof or not? And this was the extreme political question of, should we settle where we are and shouldn't we settle where we are? And the camp, until now, Palestinian refugee camps, until now, they are the results of these continuous political struggles. It's like, what does it mean to have more than 2 houses? How can we still be keeping our rights? And this is where you don't become a sadaqah, right? This is where the discussion around how we create political public spaces, right? How we create social and engaged public space, how we create collectivity beyond only one host, which is the state, becomes for me extremely important in order to go beyond the sadaqah situation, right? Beyond the relief situation. Because one thing that, unfortunately, refugees were put in this situation where they are by humanitarian organization and sometimes by themselves also seen only as a relief people, while if you would think about the figure of refugees today, they are the strongest in the world where we are living right now. They are the one witnessing what does it mean to have more than a home contemporary. They are the most contemporary figures in somehow. They are not only, we recognize as Palestinians that refugees carries in their own body two figures. One is the hero figure and one is the person, the weak and the relief person figure, and they are always actually negotiating among themselves who is doing what. And as if, and somehow internationally and conceptually, we decided to see only one side of the refugees, less the one that is actually challenging the status quo, challenging even the state as a notion, challenging our political order today. I mean, these are the people in the front line, in that struggle. So for me, what is extremely important, and each one of us choose his own struggle and his own conceptual way of thinking things. I think that for me, the most extreme part is how to keep the political dimension and how not to normalize the sadaqah part of the refugee status, because they are way beyond only being a relief situation. So and somehow I think this is extremely important for me. And I see you putting the concrete tent. I don't know, what would you like to, Pauline, do you want to ask?
Yes, yeah, Sandi, I was, it's just for our participant also, if probably they don't know the project, but I was thinking we have like maybe like 5 minutes left to finish. It's almost 9 o'clock. Of course, I will ask again if someone in our participant has any question. But just want to, I don't want to finish without mentioning this concrete tent project in Daesh camp that you and Alessandro designed, and what is the meaning for gathering together also metaphorically and at concrete tents, and heritage of a refugee.
Yes, sure. I mean, I think that this is a little bit was our way as architects to respond on what does it mean to create a building for a university. And this was a bit of a campus in camps, one of the campus in camps final sort of projects where we were challenged by the community. There was a moment where we felt, I mentioned only the private and the public dimension of the camp. And out of this, there are so many things that we came back as once we finished our PhD in urban planning in Europe, we came back to Palestine, right? I mean, and we began our engagement in the camp, and we understand that all what we learned so far until our PhD in urban planning was not helpful to understand anything in the reality we were seeing. We were seeing practice on the ground that we don't have any conceptual sort of dimension for it or any way of understanding it in a proper manner. And therefore we decided, all what we need is a university in a refugee camp. And we decided to create a university in a refugee camp. We call it campus in camps. It comes out of the fact that we wanted to bring the campus in the camp. And we began simply to actually define terms and understand what was happening around us, and to understand, concepts such as normalization, such as masha, and how the political struggle of refugees produced urban planning and produced spaces, and in which way people actually managed to insist on their temporariness as a way to struggle for their return back home. The right of return, one of the major way of answering to the right of return in a special way is to say, we want to keep ourselves living in tents, even if we are having 7-floor houses. And the tent is more an idea of temporariness, right? We belong to somewhere else. We belong to more than a place, yet we love the camp, right? In which way you can belong, this whole contradiction of belonging in more than a place and living in a concrete while you are living in a temporary situation of the tent. And when we were a little bit thinking about, a place where we can conduct campus in camps as a university, we were challenged a little bit by the community saying, you are architects, right? Why you are only using words and concepts, and why don't you have a way of expressing this in a special form? And yet the concrete tent was something, an expression that came to us as to say, how can we express this permanent temporariness, right? We wrote a book, we call it Permanent Temporariness, and it's a 300 pages book, right? So, and we decided what the concrete tent was simply a way to express a lot of things that maybe in the words we express in the book of Permanent Temporariness, but the project of the concrete tent was a way of expressing in a material form and in creating that gathering place that whoever would go there would make the simple question, why a concrete tent? And how life in camp is made of a concrete tent, right? So this was a little bit the aim of that university that we created in the camp. And this is simply the university in the camp. This is the building of campus in camps in the Haitian refugee camp.
Thank you very much, Sandi. I want to ask if anyone has a question or comment, want to say something. I have the last thing about Al-Madafa. What is the situation of the project right now? What is the plans for right now for the future? Is it possible Imece Solidarity can host an Al-Madafa, Ali?
Yeah, why not?
Maybe in the future. I don't know. I'm thinking, why not? Why
Yeah,
not?
why not? We are open always.
Uh,
And also, as
Yeah.
you know, we stopped the Imece village concept for a few time, but now we are looking for a permanent land, and I guess I did find somewhere in Izmir region. In 1 year, inshallah, we can invite them, and then we can
Yes.
share our knowledge and we can share our idea.
Yeah.
From our side, we have different problems in Izmir, in Turkey, and in the Palestine side, very different, and at Europe also very different.
Of course, yeah.
In here, emotionally, the people can live easily. Why? Because still they have a hope for going to EU countries, and then new problems waiting for them. As Sandi did show us, very
Yeah.
big and huge problems waiting.
Mhm.
In here, they have a huge problems, but they have a hope. Still, they have a hope. Still, they are trying cross the border. However, they have enough power for living in Izmir streets into the very bad condition because of they have a hope still, and it is a most important thing for them, I guess.
Yeah, this is an amazing image, actually. You are absolutely right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
thank you very much. I
Thank
don't
you
have
very
too
much,
much
Sandi.
question for tonight.
Next year, inshallah, we touch
We
base
meet.
again. And
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
We
Inshallah.
want to
And
start.
actually, I have the living room happening in so many other places that we had to choose what to show, what not to show. We wanted to choose, to show part of Palestine. I wish, and one day I will explain to you the other madafas and what's happening right now. I mean, it's a whole new chapter that is happening, but maybe for one next time.
Yes.
Inshallah,
Yes.
soon, sister. Inshallah, soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Sandi.
Have a great evening.
Thank you for your time, and we will edit and then put online this seminar, and we will let you know. I mean, we will ask you, and some people are thanking you here in the participant chat.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you very much. I'm closing. I'm just stopping the record.